Okay, guys, here goes nothing. Attempt number 2. Is my audio blowing up your ears? Waiting to see this thing so I can see your comments. Check if not causing you any physical pain. Okay, we've lost a few people. Maybe we're gaining them back. So does it sound okay, everyone? Okay. Okay, guys, so I'm gonna go to Twitter now because I don't want to create an inception here, but I'm gonna try and see if I can see your comments on my phone. There, I think it's all good now. Apologies for my badness at this. It's my third Periscope, I guess, third time lucky. So I wanted to talk to you guys about this thing that's happening in Syria. The US is talking about possibly pulling out. We heard that 10 months ago when Trump announced the US pullout and nothing happened. So people are rightly skeptical about what's going to happen now. But let's assume that this time is going to be legitimate. What does that mean? I think, what we'll do is we'll wait a few minutes before we get into the meat of this. Let's see if we can get more people to join. I'm trying to see your comments here. 1 second. Let's see. Okay. So, oh no, that's going to create an inception again. Well, you can tweet at me. I will be able to answer your tweets because obviously I'm still a beginner at this and I'm still not able to figure it out completely. I'm so sorry, guys. But yes, you're more than welcome to tweet me your comments and I will be checking them sporadically. So first of all, let me check if everything is okay. Yes, okay. So we have this news that the US is going to pull out, and the statement that they're not going to pull out completely, but they're going to pull out from the region that Turkey is going to go into. So does that mean a complete US pullout? Well, perhaps it's the beginning of one. Because Turkey basically controls a lot of the US's supply lines, how the US gets food and water into Syria, because they don't have control over the Iraqi border. As we know, in Abu Kamal, the Syrian-Iraqi border just opened up and it's controlled by Syria. It's not controlled by the US. And perhaps that's also because Iran has a lot of influence in Iraq. So Turkey is basically the US's lifeline in Syria, and by supporting what is basically the PKK, the YPG, whose leader is Öcalan, they're basically really angering their NATO ally Turkey, and they have been for years. And not much has changed over the last 10-11 months since Trump announced the pullout. The situation strategically on the ground in Syria has been pretty much exactly almost the same, except for the fact that the Syrian military has been able to take more ground in Idlib. And that's only going to become, given more time, the Syrian military is going to gain more and more territory there. And so Turkey is going to face the same exact problem that it had from the start, which is an existential threat. If the YPG has control over the Syrian-Turkish border, then they're afraid that they're going to start trouble across inside Turkey, and the PKK is going to want their separatist state too. Now, here's the thing, you're to understand this politically, strategically, you have to think about international law. And as far as international law is concerned, the Syrian country is a sovereign UN member state, and its sovereignty should not be breached. And at the moment, both the US and Turkey are already breaching Syrian sovereignty. They're already occupying it. And the US is claiming, at least the politicians and the media are, claiming that they want a permanent 50-year stay, at least that's what they used to say, and they want to create a Kurdish separatist state into Syria just the same way they did in Iraq. This is unacceptable for various reasons. Number one, of course, it breaches Syrian sovereignty. Number two, Kurds are not the only people in that area. There are Arabs, Turks, and Assyrians. And under the Kurdish SDF or YPG or whatever acronym it is right now, PKK, PYD, there's like 100 different acronyms for basically the same group. They are ethnically cleansing other minorities like Arabs and Assyrians. And this has even been acknowledged by US-backed human rights organizations like HRW and Amnesty International. So it's not a secret. And the fact that they disarmed Assyrian groups while ISIS was still active in the region, and also assassinated Assyrian Christian leaders, as well as instituted laws that basically strip Assyrians of their right to return to their homes after they fled ISIS, because there's a law that they could take their houses. You know, all of these things are the reasons why that there shouldn't be a Kurdistan. Another reason is the Kurds don't have this ancient history in the region of northeast Syria. I mean, they have, who are they really? They are Iranian originally. They speak an Iranian dialect. And the reason they moved into different regions outside of Iran is because they lived a nomadic lifestyle. And we know that that is even acknowledged by BBC and CNN. So we know that there should not be this Kurdish state, especially since the land that the US is trying to carve out east of the Euphrates River isn't all, the south part of it doesn't even have any Kurds in it at all. And that's the part where all the oil fields are. And this is what it's really about. It's about controlling Syria's oil and preventing it from reaching the vast majority of Syria's population. Because the northeast of Syria is the least populated part of Syria. It's the west coast of Syria that has most population. And yet the east part of Syria contains a lot of oil and a lot of water. And for all these reasons, all of these people crying about what's going to happen to the Kurds, I'm going to answer you that question. If Turkey pulls in and the US moves out, the Syrian military will go in to protect the Kurds, along with Russia and Iran. They're not going to allow civilians of any ethnicity to be attacked. And furthermore, it is about Syria's sovereignty. The state will protect the Kurds because that is what they have always done. Now, I'd like to get to some of the comments that people are making here and address them. It's the only reason in the first place that these foreign powers were able to get in and occupy regions of Syria is because of the Kurdish YPG's treachery. Turkey was able to occupy Afrin because the Kurdish SDF or YPG refused to allow the Syrian military to go in and protect that piece of territory, and they claimed that they were going to defend it by themselves and claim it as their own territory. And what ended up happening is they got their asses whipped and they lost Afrin, Syria's Afrin. And it seems like hopefully they will have learned from that lesson now and accept support from the Syrian state and Syrian military, since they claim to be Syrian and patriotic to Syria. Perhaps now they will allow the Syrian military to defend its own territory and not have to get into an altercation with them. And of course, the Syrian state it's its job to protect its own citizens. It's not the United States military. It's not Trump's job. It's the Syrian state's job. So people are saying that, Trump or the US is abandoning the Kurds. No, because the Kurds are not the US's responsibility. Syrian Kurds are the responsibility of the Syrian state. it is a good, this, in a way, it is a good thing. Even though we're still going to have a Turkish and possibly a US occupation, at least now it seems more likely that the US is going to have a complete pullout. And that means that there's going to be one less occupying power occupying the US, occupying Syria that we have to deal with. This idea that the Kurds were so loyal to the US that they helped fight the ISIS militants. The thing is that the Syrian military fought ISIS, and they didn't ask. They thanked people that helped them fight. They didn't ask for favors or money for fighting terrorists on their own territory. And the Kurds, nobody owes you anything for fighting terrorists on your own land. If anything, if the US helped Kurds fight ISIS, then isn't it the Kurds that owe the US? I mean, the logic, it fails completely. So, the question is now, what's going to happen? Are the Kurds going to resist this Turkish invasion, or are they going to cede territory just like they did in Manbij? Are they going to obey the US's directions and just pull out peacefully, or are they going to finally have some kind of patriotic bone in their body and resist an occupation? They certainly didn't resist the US occupation. No, they worked alongside with it. So who knows? Maybe they'll welcome a Turkish invasion. Hopefully they won't, and the Syrian military can come in and defend its own territory. So here we have Tel Abyad base, which is now already empty of US soldiers, and it's on the Syrian-Turkish border. So, this seems like it's happening. I mean, we had similar reports like that 10 months ago, and then Trump succumbed to peer pressure from his circle. I don't know if that included Bolton at the time. I assume that it did. So perhaps he will fold again, but it seems like it's happening. It seems like the US is pulling out. And I'd like to address some of these neocon liberals that are raging at the moment, because it's kind of comical. Molly, she has been a person who supported the FSA, which is backed by Turkey, and she's against the Syrian government, and she, is jumping on the Kurd-pushing, Kurdistan-creating bandwagon, and has for some time. And here she's got this thread about, and she getting all the retweets about how, the SDF fighters died in battles against ISIS. It's interesting that some of those SDF actually were members of ISIS, and they switched sides. The Syrian military doesn't have anything like that. And we're discarding them to be ethnically cleansed by Turkey. If the Syrian military goes in to defend them, then there's not going to be any ethnic cleansing. But it's interesting that someone like this doesn't really care when there's ethnic cleansing of other minorities by the Kurdish militias. If it's Assyrians or Arabs or Turkmens, if it's Assyrian Christians having, their language suppressed, none of these people care. It's only one minority that they care about. And that's because this is what they wanted to do since the 80s. Creating a Kurdistan is part of the Oded Yunan plan. It's a Zionist agenda. It doesn't really benefit the US. It doesn't help the US with its NATO ally Turkey. It's basically for Israel. Why? Because if they can create all of these little tiny statelets in the Middle East based on either ethno-states or religions, then they can have them fighting each other for resources perpetually, and potentially then invade and take over their territory later on. Israel is always looking to expand, and weakening Syria, as we saw with the Golan Heights, that was all part of the plan. So this is the whole point of this Kurdish thing. It's not about nationalism or human rights. There's never been a state called Kurdistan, because like Bedouin Arabs, they've never created a civilization or a city. That's why there wasn't a Kurdish state. It wasn't some kind of conspiracy, or they weren't robbed of land that already belonged to them. East Turkey, again, was part of Armenia. It was many Armenians lived there until the Armenian genocide, in which Turkish Kurds actually took part. So this talk about like ethnic cleansing because Arabs might move back in to northeast Syria. Shock horror! Arabs might move back in. Like that's supposed to be some kind of ethnic cleansing. To put Syrians back into Syria is considered ethnic cleansing by these people. They want to deport Arab refugees from Turkey and put them in Kurdish homes. Okay, so, this hysteria. Syrians belong in Syria. They belong in their own country. They don't belong in Turkey. They don't belong in Europe, if that's where Molly wants them. That's not where they should go. They belong in their own country, and they don't belong in a tent under the snow for 8 years. So the idea that Syrians moving back into the northeast being a bad thing is complete hypocrisy. It is promoting ethnic cleansing because those people were there in the beginning. Those people were from the northeast of Syria and they just want to go back to their own homes. But I guess, that's something that these Kurdish stand pushing neoliberals are very afraid of. This whole idea that this region belongs to Kurds only. Kamishli, it was founded by Assyrians that were running away from the genocide. I mean, that region belongs to all Syrians, not just the people that live in northeast Syria, but people from Damascus who want to move into that area. Every place of Syria belongs to every Syrian. It doesn't just belong to one minority. And this idea of like dividing states, you would never see them apply it in the West. It just so happens that they're always applying it only to the East. Ethno-states are allowed in the East, but not in the West. Isn't that interesting? So that's what I think of this kind of statements. It's hard to overestimate how ignorant and venal the Trump administration's betrayal of the SDF is. Turkey has recently violently deported thousands of Syrian refugees back to Syria. Okay, look, this Molly supported the Turkish-backed insurgency. Like, hello? And I wonder what she's going to do if the Syrian military starts working with the Kurdish militias to push the Turkish invasion back. Which side is she going to be on? Because there's going to be some confusion here because she's been opposed to the regime for so long. Who else have we got here? Quick follow is to help folks navigate the Syria swear word explicit with haste. And here we have another Kurdistan pusher, which I find very interesting. And here's one I know of as well. I'm sure the hysteria will be extreme. She has had some hysteria in the past. Maybe she's now kind of silent about it. Seems she hasn't made any comments. That's unfortunate. I was hoping we could see something. If the US stands by and allows this to happen, and I don't think they will. Oh, okay. We'll see about that. It will be complicit in the demographic re-engineering, refugee deportations, and mass displacement, helping ISIS gain ground. Okay, so again, she's upset about Syrian refugees going back to Syria. Isn't that demographic re-engineering? Isn't she doing demographic re-engineering? Like, the hypocrisy is just profound. Syrians, whether they be Arab or Kurdish, should be allowed to live in any part of Syria that they want to live. It's not somehow wrong or illegal for them to move into the northeast of Syria. That's nonsensical. Again, I hope you guys that my audio is okay. Let's see here. Oh, they're really very interested in the Iraqi protests, probably because they hope that perhaps if they can push Iran out of Iraq, then they could have the Syria-Iraq border crossing and control of it, and then they can resupply themselves. Maybe that's why it's all happening at the same time as the Syria-Iraq border opened. So nothing from him yet. So, here's another one. Like, will you let the Kurds decide? Like, well, they're not the only ethnicity living in that area. They're not in any way superior to any other ethnicity that's living in that area. So why should their decision have any more merit than any other Syrian living there? They're not even a majority. They're a plurality, which means they're the ethnic group with the highest percentage, I think, but not a majority. So that's very different. So again, I'm saying like they're not superior. They're equal to every other race, and his reply is like some other superior. Like they're just trying to mirror everything. It's just complete hypocrisy. The Syrian state is gonna control all of Syria. That's the right thing. I mean, they're the only ones that can protect all minorities, not just one minority, but all minorities. We shouldn't have one minority deciding the fate of the others. So if the Syrian state can take back northeast Syria, we'll get the oil back, we'll get our resources back, Syria can rebuild itself, Syrians can return to their lives, and this would be all a good thing. Of course, we have to get rid of the Turkish occupation first, but things as they are now, with the US is building illegal bases, and every now and then they lose a soldier because Turkey bombs them, and they think they're going to have a state, and Al-Qaeda is in Idlib, and the US is protecting Al-Qaeda in Idlib to appease Turkey. This kind of thing, this status can't continue. So we're going to have to have this period of change, and hopefully it means that the Syrian military will go in east of the Euphrates and protect all the Syrians living in it and take back Syrian territory. So I hope I haven't spoken too much, but I'm going to check any comments from anyone before I stop the broadcast. Okay, so I don't know if this guy is even reading my my chats. Let's see if any of you guys have said anything. Audio is fine. Thank you, Dino. I'm contradicting myself. Oh, let's see. Oh, it's a nice broadcast. I don't usually watch live broadcasts, but this one is interesting. Oh, thank you. Okay. First of all, many Kurds joined ISIS. So yes, that's true. Many Kurds did join ISIS. So he says you're contradicting yourself. Once you say US helped the Kurds fight ISIS, then you say the US created ISIS. There's no contradiction. The US created ISIS in Iraq in 2006. Then they supported Al-Qaeda linked groups in Syria and armed them and allowed ISIS to enter Syria and take over vast amounts of territory, especially in the east of the country where the Kurdish region is. No coincidence at all, right? And somehow use that as an excuse to invade Syria under the guise of fighting terrorism. It's always some of the same excuses. Weapons of mass destruction, regime change for democracy, and WMDs, of course, have said that, and fighting terrorism. It's like, if it isn't broke, why fix it? They've gotten away with these excuses before. I'd love to see your comments, guys. Like, I'm going to check your comments, even though it might create an inception, I suppose, a Twitter or a Periscope-ception. Just because eventually I'm going to fix this and be able to see your comments without having to cause this thing. Hopefully. I don't know how many. Well, I've gained some people. I don't really see any comments, which is tragic. Anyone can say anything? Oh, a heart. That's so sweet. Thank you. Oh no, it's purple now. Do you guys have any questions? Anything I can add? I do think that if the US pulls out and the Turks come in, then what's going to happen is the Syrians and the Russians are going to go east of the Euphrates. Siri, every time I say Syria, Siri wants to talk, which is really frustrating. So I don't see any comments, so I'm gonna go back to Twitter and shut this off. Well, guys, I don't know, have I said it all? I suppose I have. If you have any more questions, I could start another live stream. So I think that should be it then, guys. I think I'm gonna do one of these live things for YouTube. It seems like it's nice to speak off the cuff, so I'm gonna do that. So thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me for the next one. And if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and tweet them at me, and I will answer them in the next one. So, thanks, guys. Bye-bye.